done.
Hello?
Hello.
This is Big Bo. Coming to you live and direct. So, Jeff just sent us something. Bezos, that is. It is a earnings report. Guess what it said, people? Just take a guess. Some of you have been going to Amazon click-through. They're extending us for another month. We appreciate that. I love each and every one of you for going to the Amazon click-through. But to those of you that didn't, hashtag no love. That's right. YOLO. You only live once. So if you're only going to live once, you need to go to streetwarriorradio.com, click the Amazon click-through, do your Amazon shopping, buy your OVO sweatshirt. That's Drake's company, for some of you that didn't know. And get it sent through your Amazon Prime. And then you help support the podcast, something that you love, something I love. Help us, help you, help me. That's all I'm talking about, people. We also want to thank TNT Security. Bunch of great guys. Great audio equipment. What's so funny over there?
It's funny watching you process information.
I'm not processing it. I just want to make sure I give the right information.
Top-notch tactics.
TNT. That's what I just said.
You got to tell people what the acronym means.
I don't have to tell them anything. You know why? Because they don't listen to me. You know why I know they don't listen to me? They don't go to fucking Amazon click-through.
You just told them they did.
Some of them do.
Oh, God.
You know what? First of all, this is my bit. This is me.
I've invaded your bit. I'm on the bit now.
You know what? I want to thank a company that's near and dear to both of our hearts, Bang Energy Drinks. Without that, JC would not be able to do this show. I wouldn't
function.
No, he wouldn't function at all.
Actually, they're not a sponsor.
They're not fucking not a sponsor at all. I hit them up, though.
Did you?
Yes. What do you think? What do you think I do all day?
That's a very good question.
What do you think I do all day for this? What do you think I do for this company all day? You think I just sit around?
I'm really not sure.
You think I just sit around and do nothing and twiddle my thumbs?
I think you sit around and watch YouTube videos and go down a rabbit hole of conspiracies.
That is half my day, sir. That is half my day. The other half, though, is spent trying to make this company successful.
Oh, right.
So I've sent out Bang hit me back, and they were just like, give us a moment to look at you guys and see what we're working with. They did do that.
Really?
Yes.
They got back to you for real?
Yes.
That's cool.
Yeah, fuckface. You just think I sit around all day?
I fucking love their black cherry vanilla. That stuff is ridiculous.
I like the lemon lime one.
I haven't had that one.
I don't know.
Which one is that one?
It's the green can.
Oh, I haven't had that one.
It's a good can. You gotta get that shit online.
Oh.
Yeah. They said they're gonna get back with us. I hope they sponsor us. So I mean that'd be kind of cool.
That would be kind of cool.
Yeah. So shout out Bang. You're not a sponsor yet, but you're here. Hopefully they listen to this episode.
We drink your stuff regardless. So.
Oh yeah, regardless of if you sponsor us, we're gonna drink your stuff and so every copy.
Honestly, it's the only energy drink that does not have.
Don't sell them yet.
No.
Don't sell them yet.
I've experienced.
Don't sell them yet. Don't do that yet. Don't sell it.
But what if that tips them over the edge?
Don't sell them yet.
All right, whatever.
Because look, you just gave them a taste, and Bang was like, "Oh, we want to hear more," and then I'm like, "Nope."
But you could hear more.
You could hear more Bang energy drink. Anyways, Amazon click-through, streetwarriorradio.com, top-notch tactics. Those are our sponsors, and we thank them in advance.
As we like to say, supporting great causes is not only a great way to help others and your community, it's also a great way to help yourself. Now, we here at the Street Warrior Radio podcast encourage people to seek out great organizations that donate the majority of their profits or proceeds to the causes that they're actually trying to help. With that, I want you to take a look at a couple organizations. Humanizing the Badge. Now, Humanizing the Badge is a non-profit organization on a mission to help forge stronger relationships between law enforcement officers and the communities that they serve. They're engaging that mission through community service projects on a national level, providing free, confidential online support for first responders and their families that reach out to deal with the unique stresses of the job, and engage on social media content through their pages and the pages of content creators that are part of their cause. And for example, Mike the Cop, Officer Daniels, Deputies Hookem and Bookem, Deputy Misdemeanor, etc. Great organization. Please go over to humanizingthebadge.com, check them out, and if you're so inclined, please donate. Also, Guardian for Heroes. Guardian for Heroes is an organization that humbly and proudly carries the torch that Chris Kyle, the American sniper, left and championed the cause to restore hope, renew spirits, and replenish energy for combat veterans transitioning to post-military life. At no cost to the beneficiaries, of the organization, Guardian for Heroes provides health club memberships, individualized programs, personal training, in-home fitness equipment, and life coaching to in-need veterans with disabilities, Gold Star families, and those suffering from post-traumatic stress from combat deployment. They use a variety of different physical and mental fitness techniques to spark conversation and create a source of support for combat veterans. This is an extremely important cause. Go over to guardianforheroes.org, check them out, and if you're so inclined, please donate. You can also go to the streetwarriorradio.com website, and on the left-hand side of every page, there's links to different organizations that we champion. Click on those, do your research. If you're comfortable, please give them a support. Also, if you have an organization that you support that we don't know about, you can contact us at streetwarriorradio.com/contact or on that email at info@streetwarriorradio.com. Give us the information, a link to the organization, and why you think we should know about them and support them, and we will definitely look into it and see what we can make happen. As always, streetwarriorradio.com. This is Street Warrior Radio episode 016 with your hosts Big Bo and me, JC. Now in this episode it's going to be a little bit different because due to some scheduling conflicts, Big Bo was not able to make the episode. So you're just going to get to listen to me talk for a long time by myself, which is going to be super exciting, and we'll probably lose like half our listeners. So with that being said, I want to take a moment, and it's a terrible day for the people of Dallas, Texas, and North Texas in general, really the whole country. As we're recording this, the Dallas Police Department lost an officer. He was shot and killed by a shoplifting suspect at a Home Depot in northeast Dallas, and the suspect pulled a gun, shot him in the back of the head. He died later at the hospital. A second officer was also shot. She was shot in the face. She is still fighting for her life. And a civilian loss prevention officer who works for Home Depot was also shot, and he too is in critical condition and still holding on for his life. And the story, as I understand it, is that there was an off-duty officer working security at the location, stopped the suspect for suspected shoplifting, conducted a warrant check of the subject, showed to have a felony warrant for auto theft, and then, of course, he called for on-duty officers to come over to the location and make an arrest, and then as one thing led to another, and this guy had a gun, and he used it. And three people paid the price, won the ultimate price in service of his community, and we thank him. We honor him, and we hope that's the last loss of life from that terrible incident. The city of Dallas, you got to understand, and North Texas as a whole, is reeling. This is the first, for the Dallas Police Department, this is the first line of duty death since 7/7/16. So, it's one of those things that it's hard to process. It's hard to process on a normal day, but in this case, it's extra hard because those wounds hadn't healed yet. those wounds hadn't healed yet. I think for everybody in this area, for everybody that, especially in law enforcement, but even the community, has suffered because of this. And I think that's important to note. I think it's important to note because we so often hear about law enforcement being demonized in the media, and we forget that there are a lot of people out there that support law enforcement, that want to see us succeed, that want to see police officers be recognized for the acts of courage and the everyday hero that they are. And also, we can't forget the other first responders, Dallas Fire Rescue, who, despite the whole cops versus firefighters, sort of deal, at the end of the day, we're all family. And we all work together, and we all... And, of course, they're no different. They go into harm's way and pull those guys out and get them to the hospital for treatment. And we can't forget that. So, a lot of heroism that day. What ultimately ended up happening was the suspect, after shooting the two on-duty officers and the loss prevention officer for Home Depot, fled in a white pickup truck. He was later spotted by Dallas Police Patrol units, from what I understand. Led them on a high-speed pursuit into downtown Dallas, or just near downtown Dallas, where he ultimately surrendered and was taken into custody without injury. Think about that what you may, but that is the ultimate goal, is to bring people like that to justice, and let them have their day in court. That's the way the system works. But anyway, and then on top of that, there were sorry, my phone's going off at Twitter. And then there were also another officer shot and killed, I believe in the state of Connecticut. I gotta look that up. I don't want to get that wrong. And that would have been the following day. And that was Corporal Eugene Cole, Somerset County, Maine, not Connecticut. I don't want to butcher the Dallas police officer's name that lost his life, but I'm going to go ahead and take a stab at it. It's going to be Officer Rogelio Santander. And I severely apologize for that. He was a 3-year veteran of the Dallas Police Department, which is always hard to hear, It's always hard to hear for a guy that was so fresh in his career and it was cut short. So, prayers to his family. They've got a long, hard road ahead of them, as do the men and women of the Dallas Police Department. So, with that being said, we're going to kind of revisit a place that might be uncomfortable. It might be uncomfortable for people. We're going to kind of do a part 2 to episode 4, which was dealing with the darkness of life. There's a lot of different facets of the darkness. One of those I'm going to focus on is relationships. Relationships are hard, whether they be family relationships, friendships, romantic relationships, marriages. It doesn't matter. They all have different dynamics, different layers to them that make them difficult on different levels. I don't think it's any serious. It's kind of a weird thing, right? You're in a dating relationship, boyfriend girlfriend relationship. You might even be living together, and you put the marriage label on it. You get married, right? And then all of a sudden it's different for some reason, right? Somehow that act of marriage, even though that's the only thing that's changed, has suddenly made things different. And with that comes a different dynamic, a different psychological dynamic for sure. In people, especially in high stress jobs, military, law enforcement, other first responders, depending on the daily exposure or the overall exposure they have to traumatic events, those people, myself included, tend to find different ways to deal with the problem, and not all of them are healthy. In there's different ways of doing it, right? There's different ways that people have done it, whether that be they close off and they have anger issues, and that leads to interpersonal relationship problems, alcoholism, drug abuse, sleeping around extramarital affairs, or just general, for lack of a better word, whorism. Different ways to drown themselves into not having to deal with the reality that's in front of them, not having to deal with the pain that they're experiencing. And it's hard sometimes. We naturally put up these walls, these barriers, and we don't want to face sometimes what is the hardest things to face. And that could be anything from a traumatic event to a bad decision that was made. It really doesn't matter. And this is not only true for those individuals that are in service somehow, but also for the spouses. I've seen and heard from both sides of it, from spouses that become withdrawn because they don't know how to relate to their soldier or their first responder spouse. They don't know how to do that, and they'll push them. I think they push themselves away, right? I think some of it is external, in that the spouse is pushing them away because they're closing off, and then a lot of times it's a noble thing, or at least that's the premise behind it. A lot of times you don't want to expose your spouse, especially if they don't have any sort of direct experience with terrible things. If they live a relatively normal life, and you don't want to burden them with the things that you've seen. I mean, you're doing it out of protection, but oftentimes that ends up backfiring, and it can backfire severely. It's one of the reasons I think why divorce rates are so high in military and first responder families, because you tend, most people tend to marry somebody outside of their profession, and those people don't know how to process that information because it's not things that they're normally exposed to. They don't typically have the personality types to deal with it, and that's not a negative thing at all. That's just people. Everybody's different. Everybody can handle different things at different levels at different times in their life. Some people, a very, very small percentage of people, and I mean extremely small percentage of people can process traumatic things extremely well, right? They can see something and they can go, okay, that's horrible. Moving on to the next thing. Regardless, though, I think with everybody, there's some sort of imprint left behind in the memory. And they may think about it from time to time, and that may be the extent of the trauma to them. Other people don't handle it like that. You have people that see blood and immediately throw up. Or they the imprint of the event is so dramatic on their psyche that they can't stop seeing the images. Every time they close their eyes, they see it. They have dreams about it or nightmares. That imprint starts affecting their emotional well-being. And that's where I'm talking about that noble protection of your spouse tends to backfire, because as you process and store all this stuff and you keep it bottled up inside, hoping to not expose your family to such things, in that process you end up closing yourself off, and it's not a conscious thing most of the time. Most of the time you don't have any control over it, and you start to funnel those imprints, those memories, into a form of communication that is typically exclusive of other people within your profession, right? And it may be a simple conversation as, "Oh my God, that was, man, that was fucked up," or whatever, and then, your partner's like, yeah, that was fucked up. And then you move on from it. Or you actually can open up to that person because you know that they can relate to you directly, because they have the same experiences that you do, or have had similar experiences and can understand it. And so therefore you end up having, in-depth conversations. And while that helps you process certain things, right, it also begins to lead you down a path to where you kind of close yourself off. And where your spouse comes into this, if they're not related to the profession that you're in, they can sit there and be closed off and have no idea what's going on with you. No idea whatsoever. And you start to put up these walls, and you start to only relate to those people, within your profession. Those people that, quote unquote, can understand. And what that ends up leading to, is a wall being built that creates distance between you and your spouse, right? And I'm not saying that you need to completely open up to every gory detail to your spouse, but you do have to have some sort of open line of communication to the outside world. And more often than not, you start with your spouse, because that's the closest person to you, right? So when we put up these walls and we become distant, that starts to bleed over into other parts of the life. And it can even go down to everyday decisions, because the mind, of course, works in mysterious ways. A lot of it we don't understand. I mean, we spend billions and billions of dollars a year trying to study the brain and the psychology of the brain and how it processes information, and we still don't understand everything. And we still don't understand a lot of how trauma affects the brain and what it does to you on a subconscious level. We know what we know, and we don't know what we don't know. And until we figure that out, there's not going to be an easy solution to it. And hell, there may not be an easy solution to it even after we figure it out. I don't know. But in the process of closing your spouse off, it does lead to other things. I mean, simple decisions when it comes down to financial decisions at home, or hell, even where you're going to go to eat. You don't care. I don't care. Whatever you want. Well, that's not what your spouse wants to hear, right? They want you to be involved in the decision-making process. They want you to be involved in every aspect of their world, because they're your spouse and they want to share everything with you. They want to be one team, one unit, one family. And in our world, we without a doubt have two families, right? We have our blue family, and then we have our family at home. And when we start putting up those walls and we start moving away from communicating with our spouse, and we start exclusively communicating with our blue family, and this is true for the military and for the fireside, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to use the law enforcement side, because that's where my experience is when it comes to this. We create these walls and we stop talking. And when we stop talking, we stop relating. And when we stop relating, distance is created, and that leads to stress, and that leads to problems. And unfortunately, I've seen more often than not, and I wish this wasn't true, but that ends up leading to people stepping outside of their relationships, whether that be the first responder or that be the spouse, because you end up not relating, and you end up meeting somebody else that you can relate to, and you end up developing a close relationship with that person. And and it's tragic. It's tragic, especially when there's a family involved. And it's tragic on an individual level and on the level as a couple. And in that, we end up lying to ourselves. We end up lying to ourselves. We end up lying to our partners. When we say everything's fine, and when it's not. And this causes a breakdown in the relationship. It starts to fracture the foundation of the relationship. And once you cross that line, once you, and you know, the point of the podcast is the basic point, the basic mission of the podcast, and it's expanded over the last, 15 episodes. But the basic mission is for Big Bo and I to share our life experiences and what we've learned from those things, lessons we've learned, life lessons, both on the street and at home. And sometimes those are very hard lessons, and sometimes those are lessons that are very hard to talk about. And we knew this going into it, and we knew that we were going to have to open ourselves up and expose ourselves and expose things that we've experienced, things that we've done, decisions that we've made, both good and bad, and that's hard to do. That's hard to do. For us, it's part of the process. It's part of the healing process and the learning experience and being better human beings. Because we're not unique to this. There's millions of people that go through the same thing. First responder world or not, it doesn't matter. Everybody experiences challenges and things in their life. And in that, we have to take an honest look at ourselves, and we have to be able to admit to things that we've done. We're not perfect in any way, shape, or form. And I use this what I'm saying right now. I use this to lead into the following thing. When it comes to having dealt with these closing offs and these needs to find acceptance and understanding in others, I've personally been on both sides of the aisle. I have been on the side of the aisle of the person that's stepped out of the relationship, and I've also been the person that's been on the receiving end of that. And focusing on that for a second, when you do something like that, when you step outside of your relationship, you tend to close off to the consequences of that, and there's heavy consequences to that, both in terms of its effect on your partner at home, but also on yourself, because we tend to hold ourselves in almost a delusional higher standard, right? We're supposed to live this pristine life and live an unsullied personal life, as the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics says, and that's not always possible, because what the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics doesn't take into account is the human aspect of everything. And human beings, regardless of your profession, regardless of how tough you are, you can't escape those things, because the mind doesn't allow you to. You can't escape those traumas. You can't escape the effects that they have on you. You can't escape the bad decisions that come with that sometimes. And there's different levels to it. So, we look at people that have been cheated on, and we look at those people, and of course we have a natural level of sympathy for them, because God, they're the victims in it, right? Well, that's not necessarily true, in the sense that there's two victims. There's the person that made the bad decision, and there's the person that was affected by the bad decision, right? And sometimes that includes children, which is horrible in and of itself. But focusing on the person that has made the bad decision, right? There's some people that get so wrapped up into it because they don't know how to handle it. They don't know how to deal with it. They don't know how to process it, that they continuously make those bad decisions. They continuously go down that path of self-destruction. And that's exactly what it is. When you violate your commitments, you have entered a path of self-destruction. And when you become conscious of it, you tend to, with that comes a lot of things, depression, I can't believe that, I would do something like that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then if you're truly honest with yourself and you truly look back on it, you can see how easily and quickly you went down that path. And both consciously and subconsciously. And that can be very hard to deal with. Especially if you've strived to be a good person, and you've strived to take care of the people that you love, and you strive to do the right thing, and then you find yourself in this position where you're like, holy shit, I can't believe I did something like that. I can't believe that's who I am. And you have two choices at that point, right? You have the choice of acceptance. The choice of acceptance in that where you kind of back yourself into this corner where it's like, well, I guess I'm just a piece of shit, and I can't get out of it, and I've messed everything up, and woe is me, and then you end up in this cycle, right? Or you can learn from it. You can learn from it, and you cannot make those mistakes again. And for me, it was the second path. It was a serious wake up call for me. It was a serious look into myself and looking at the effects that it had on my spouse, and who wasn't we weren't married at the time, but well, that doesn't make a difference. And that statement's really irrelevant, but you look at the pain you've caused. You look at the sobering reality that you were capable of acting so selfishly and making such a decision. And for me, it was a learning moment. It was a real learning moment. I learned some extremely valuable lessons from that, and I committed to making a change in myself, to going back to who I wanted to be, and that's just the thing. We people talk about who they are. Well, who are we? We are who we choose to be. Because as I've said before, life is about choices. Life is about, at the end of the day, you make a choice to act a certain way, to behave a certain way, to live a certain way. And if you're living the wrong way and you recognize that, you have the choice to get out of it. Or you have the choice to stay in it and deal with the aftermath. And the continued aftermath, because it just becomes a cycle after that. It becomes a cycle of self-destruction. But if you choose to learn from it, and you choose to move forward, you're not giving yourself a pass by any means. And if you do, you haven't learned anything. You have to take a hard look at yourself, and you have to go, is this who I want to be? Is this who I am? Now that you've learned you're capable of being that person, that's when you step back and you say, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to be this person. I'm not going to hurt other people like this again. I'm not going to hurt other people like this. I'm not going to hurt myself. And sometimes people need that wake-up call. Hell, I needed that wake-up call. And that was hard. That was hard. That led to a very dark time in my life. And it was a dark time that, you continuously struggle with. And not the... it maybe for some people it's this way. I can only speak to my own experience directly, but with 100% certainty. But in that experience, it was easy to make the decision to never hurt anybody like that again. That was easy, because I don't want to cause other people pain. I don't want to hurt other people. I think of myself as a good person. I think of myself as a strong person. Because looking back on my life in particular, I've faced a lot of challenges in my life. And I'm not going to say more than most, but it's been a decent share. Murphy of Murphy's Law and I are not friends, at all. And, those decisions affected everyone around me. It broke friendships. It broke relationships. It broke trust. And that's one of the hardest things to get back. But I knew that it was going to take work to come back from that road. And from that point on, I decided I was going to be a very transparent person with my spouse. Does that mean that I was continuously perfect after that and I didn't make stupid decisions? No, of course not. I'm a guy, first of all, so stupid decisions is ingrained in my DNA. But I couldn't look myself in the mirror and continue to be the person that I was. And on top of that, there was a lot of other issues going on, things that I hadn't properly dealt with at work, and things that had gone on previously in my personal life, in regards to like custody battle and thing from previous marriage. And I was in a dark place, a real dark place, waking up one morning and looking at my world and looking at the world that I had created for myself, and looking back at it and looking at it honestly, there's no one to blame but myself. And you have to take ownership of it. And again, that doesn't mean that other mistakes didn't happen. Now, not that particular mistake of being unfaithful. That's a mistake that I can't and won't make again, because it's not worth it. It's just not worth it. It's not worth the pain to somebody else. It's not worth the self-destructiveness and the pain that you cause yourself. It's not worth the unhappiness. It doesn't fulfill anything. It doesn't do anything but create problems, right? And oftentimes they're problems that blow up and become so overwhelming that, of course, you deal with them in the wrong ways. And at the very beginning, of course, when you're found out, because you're always found out at some point, you tend to become defensive and angry, and you don't handle them correctly. You tend to lash out, and you tend to blame the other person. And I think that's a natural human thing. I think people do that, and they don't necessarily know that they're doing it. It's just a natural defense mechanism. My world is falling apart. It's fight or flight, right? And people that don't just disappear and run away from it, they tend to fight, but they tend to fight in the wrong way. And it's not until you take an introspective look into yourself and you go, hey, you know what? No, I'm fighting with the wrong person. I need to be fighting with myself. I need to be fighting with myself to be a better person. I need to be fighting with this newfound understanding that I'm capable of making that kind of decision. Because, you've heard the phrase never say never, right? And it's true. It's true. You could easily say, oh, I would never do that. Whatever it may be, it doesn't matter. I would never do that. I can't do that. I'm not capable of doing such things. And it's really not true. You look at examples in history of people that, shoot. And this is a completely different subject, as far as the bad decisions, the immoral decisions that were made. But you look at things like the My Lai massacre in Vietnam. You look at, I think it was Sand Creek, the Native American massacre by U.S. soldiers in the 1870s, it was 1864, I think is when that happened. and you listen to the testimony of the people that were there, that were causing the massacre, especially in like My Lai, right? And they were so caught up in the moment. They were so caught up in the world that they were in, this world of terrible destruction and trauma, and being picked at the enemy all the time, and never seeing the enemy and directly, and their buddies are getting killed, and you have this overzealous, self-absorbed, terrible leader that leads you down this path, and you go willingly. And it takes, like, for instance, in the My Lai massacre, 500 men, women, and children raped, slaughtered, burned, an entire village, the village of My Lai. And it took one person saying, "Stop, no more." And most of the people stopped. They stopped. And then when they realized what it was they had done, they were horrified. Absolutely horrified at what they had done. And they were all people, for the most part, that never saw themselves capable of committing such atrocities. And to simplify it and relate it to what I'm talking about, you can't ever say never, that you're not capable of doing such things, because we don't understand how the mind works 100%. And we can find ourselves backed into a corner where we make decisions, bad decisions, hurtful decisions, in order to escape, in order to try to cover up the pain that we're feeling. And this bad decision that I made was a culmination of a lot of different things that were compiling at the time. And it led me down this path of darkness that in some ways was very comfortable. In some ways it was very, very comfortable. It was almost like a safety blanket. It's like I didn't know how to feel otherwise. And going back even further than that, this was a common theme throughout my life. Bad decision after bad decision. And you can blame it on a variety of things. You can blame it on lack of parenting. You can blame it on lack of good influences. You can blame it on a lot of things. As we tend to do. We tend to blame everything else in our environment on the decisions that we make. And there is some truth, absolutely, to your environment being an influence on you and who you turn out to be. But at the end of the day, and this was the lesson that I learned, this was probably the most important lesson that I learned, was that at the end of the day, despite everything, despite your environment, despite the things that have happened to you, you still make a choice. You still make a choice to act a certain way. You still make a choice to behave in a certain way. You still make a choice to be self-destructive. And it's funny we say self-destructive. There's no real such thing as self-destructive, because virtually everyone has somebody that cares about them. And when they start to destroy themselves, they begin to hurt and destroy the others around them. And a lot of times you don't even see it because you're so wrapped up in your own bullshit that you can't open your eyes wide enough to see the bigger picture. Well, I reached a point where the bigger picture became apparent to me. And with all these things going on, and this darkness that was consuming me, this inner demon, this possession of myself that I allowed to happen, led me down a very dark path. And for a while, I wanted to die. I wanted to die. I didn't want to be around anymore. I felt worthless. I was depressed all the time. I felt like I was at the end of my rope, and my proverbial rope. And ironically enough, it was the person that I hurt the most that pulled me out of that. It was the person that I hurt the most that pulled me out of that opened my eyes to what I had done and where I was mentally. Because at that point I had seen a lot. I had seen a lot. I had seen a lot of things at work that I didn't understand. A lot of things at the time that through machismo and that alpha personality, I brushed off. I thought it didn't bother me. Little did I know that there's this little box in the back of your brain, and there's this little guy in there, and he takes snapshots of all these things that happen in your life. All these things, both good and bad, and he stores them. He stores them in this little box. Well, when the box gets full, it explodes. And whatever the dominant issues are the ones that are going to come back and bite you the hardest, whether that be good or bad. And sometimes it's a good bite, sometimes it's not. In my case, it wasn't. It wasn't a good bite at all. And I realized that I needed to wake up. That I was not the man that I wanted to be. And it wasn't about the job. I mean, the job, I was excelling. At work, that was my escape. That's where I wanted to be. And it's the place where I was doing well. But I was doing well because I was hiding. I was focusing all this bad energy, these bad things that were happening. I was turning around and taking that energy and focusing into work. And I was doing a lot of good things at work. I had a good reputation. I was a go-getter. I was very proactive. I was out there putting bad guys in jail. And I felt like that was, as long as that was okay, everything else would be fine. I convinced myself of that. And I convinced myself of that because it's all I had to hold on to. At this point, my children were no longer with me. They had, my ex-wife had moved them to another state. I didn't have the access to them, the daily access that I was used to, which crushed me. But I took that and I stuffed it away. Or at least I thought I stuffed it away. I felt like I stuffed it away, but in reality, you're when you're not outside looking in, which is what everybody else is to you, you're not seeing certain things. And when you're not seeing certain things, when you're not open and understanding and recognizing the darkness that you can so easily wrap yourself in, you begin making those bad decisions. And that's what I did. I made bad decisions and people were hurt and I was hurt. And there's going to be people out there that have been cheated on, or people out there that have been wronged by somebody and not have any sympathy for this. And that's fine. I get that. And hopefully you never find yourself in a position where you're hurting somebody else, in a way that you never thought you could, in a way that you never thought was possible. And I hope that. And it's not till you do. And of course I was seeing it all around me. People making those same bad decisions. And you look at them and you judge them because you're just like, I would never do anything like that. And then suddenly you find yourself in that position because of a series of choices that you've made. And the recovery from that is not easy. It's not easy at all. The recovery from that is one of the hardest things you will ever do. Because even if you're fortunate enough to repair the relationship that you've damaged enough to the point where the conversation exists to, okay, we can work this out. We can move forward and we can fix this, right? Even if you're lucky enough to do that, it's not just you wake up the next day and everything's fine. I mean, at all. You're going to be in for a long, hard fight. And it takes commitment. It takes a self-commitment. It takes an external commitment. And you have to be able to be transparent, be honest with yourself, be honest with the other person, and expose yourself. And that's a very hard thing to do. It's an extremely hard thing to do. And there's no easy answer for it. Because if you're not fortunate enough, if you're not lucky enough to be able to salvage the relationship that you've damaged, now you're left with yourself. You're left with yourself. And you're left to look in the mirror and do self-reflection. And in that moment, it's the easiest to start making excuses and to justify the behavior, right? It's the easiest because you're left with yourself. You're not left with necessarily that daily reminder right in front of you of the bad decision that you've made, of the hurtful decision that you've made. You're not left with that. So it's easy to put a cover over that and continue down that path. Because you look at it like, okay, well, all right, well, on to the next one, right? And it's easier for people that look at it from the outside and judge that situation. It's hard unless they've been through it to understand. And hopefully they never do go through it. But when you're by yourself, like I said, it's easy to just sweep it under the rug and move on. But when you're left with that, and I say that's the unfortunate route. That's the unfortunate route because I think, at least based on what I've seen in my own life experience, I think that route, the one where you're left by yourself, I think that is the most unfortunate one because you're so easily doomed to repeat the mistakes that you've made. But when you're left with that daily reminder, I think that's the fortunate one because it forces you to take a look at yourself. It forces you to take a look at the consequences of what you've done. And it forces you to be honest with yourself. And being honest with yourself is the hardest thing in the world sometimes. Because you have to be able to sit there and open yourself up and expose yourself and deal with what you've done. And you don't want to. But at the same time, you do want to, because if you're aware of the bad behavior, then you can start to heal. And you're not going to be able to heal your partner, your spouse, whatever. You're not going to be able to heal that external relationship until you heal yourself, until you recognize these things and you fix these problems. Because they are problems. They're huge, fractured problems. And it takes time. It takes years. There's still things that I deal with to this day. Things that I earned, problems that I earned that come up. And it's real easy to, after a certain length of time, and we're talking about 7 years, right? So you're after that length of time goes by and it's still coming up, you have a tendency to, after you've recognized the problem, you've dedicated yourself to the fact that you're never going to make those kind of decisions again, that you recognize the indicators, you recognize the triggers, and you're going to go, nope, I'm going to stop this at the beginning so that this doesn't happen again. But as you get used to that, and as you begin to make the right decisions, and you make those right decisions for a long period of time, these things still pop back up, because you got to remember, in that damaged relationship, in that person that you've hurt, well, they may have externally forgiven you and stayed, but the damage is still there. The damage is still done, right? And in healing ourselves, we can't forget that we have to be actively participating in the healing of the person that we hurt. We have to. It's extremely important. Because without that, nothing's going to get resolved. Nothing at all. We have to not only focus our efforts on healing ourselves, but we have to heal the other person. Or we can't heal the other person. That's not realistic. But what we can do is we can take an active role in their healing process. We have to. We have to. If we've caused the damage, we have to be part of the solution. If that person is willing to give you that second chance. It doesn't mean it's going to succeed. It doesn't mean that it's going to, that you're going to be able to perform a miracle and be able to continue. It doesn't mean that at all. What it does mean is you've been given a chance. You've been given a chance to rectify to the best of your ability a situation in which you've caused. I got that chance. And like I said, it's not an easy road. It's a damn near impossible road. But it's one that I was willing to go down. It's one I was willing to go down. It's one I was willing to accept the challenge. I was willing to accept the challenge and fight with everything that I could. Does that mean I was always successful? Does that mean I came in and saved the day? No. Not at all. Not at all. But it does mean that the door was opened and I was able to walk through it. And see, that's where I think the fortunate side of all this comes in. Because if you're allowed that door to walk through, you better damn well walk through it. Because even if it doesn't work out, even if it ultimately fails, you tried. You tried. You did what you could with the damage that you caused. And it may not be immediate. It may be years down the road. It may be years and years down the road. And it may not be you that decides to stop trying. It may be the other person. But let's look at the other person. And I can speak to this because I've also been on the other side of it. I've also been on the receiving end of those bad decisions. So that in and of itself is an impossible door to open, it feels like. Because it feels like once you've felt that betrayal and you've felt that hurt, that there's no coming back from that. There's no recovery from that, because obviously the love isn't shattered. You don't not love that person anymore. You still love that person. You still, you may not have those feelings of being in love. And that can be temporary. That can be earned back. But the trust is damaged. And trust can be earned back. But you have to be willing to allow it to be. You have to take a step back. And this sounds funny being on the other end, but you yourself have to take a step back and you have to look at yourself and you have to go, what did I do to be part of this situation? What did I contribute to this disaster? Because it's not a one person show. It's two people. It's two people involved in the process. What did I not do? What did I not see? Maybe, and this takes a lot. It does. It takes a lot. Deep down inside of you, it takes a lot. As a matter of fact, it takes everything you have. It takes everything you have to stop and detach yourself for a moment and look at this person that's hurt you and say, what can I do to help this person? And what did I do? What did I do? What's my role in all of this? How was I a contributing factor? Was I a contributing factor? Let's look at this. Let's talk about this. And maybe you can't talk about it to that person. Maybe you have to seek that outside resource, right? Sometimes you do. It might actually be better that you do. Because it's not your fault that that person made the decision to step out on you, right? But that does not mean that there's not things that you contributed to the problem. Did I not recognize that they were going through this? Did I not recognize that they were hurting? Is there a decision I could have made? Sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes it's yes. First, you have to identify that. And I think you have to identify that before you can begin to take the next step. What was my involvement in the process? What was my involvement in their bad decision? What was it that I was not doing for them? What need was I not fulfilling? Because those are changes you're going to have to make about yourself. Because regardless of whether or not you stay, regardless of whether or not it works out, regardless of these things, you are going to move on at some point and meet somebody else and move into another relationship, most likely. And if you're doing things wrong yourself from the very beginning, this is just going to become another cycle for you. You're going to enter into another, and it may not be a cheating issue. It may be something else. It may be emotional detachment. It may be that you push that person away. You have to look at yourself and go, what have I brought from the past? What have I held on to that may have contributed to this? Because once you can identify that, and then you can deal with that problem, whatever it may be, then if you do move on, if you do end up on another path with someone else, you don't make those same mistakes. You don't bring that same baggage into it. People want to vilify the cheater. And yes, it is abhorrent what they have done. But we also get too wrapped up, I think, in my opinion, having been on both sides of it, and this is just my experience. Obviously, it may very well be different for everybody else. But on my end, I have to look at myself also, and I have to say, okay, did I allow myself to become a victim of this? And how did I do that? What actions did I take? What steps did I take? What did I deny this person that I love? How have I failed them? And again, I think once we recognize those things, we can begin to move forward. Once we recognize those things and we make a concerted effort to fix those things, we can step back and go, okay, now I've identified what my role in this was. Okay, now I can begin to heal, either with this person or without this person. I believe, having been on both sides of it, that you have to take a step back and look at the totality of it. Was it a bad relationship to begin with? Was it abusive? Was there things going on? Has this occurred multiple times? Is this one of those things where it's habitual? Or was this a one-time thing? Was this something where a bad decision was made? Everyone is hurt. But I love this person. This is the person I chose. And through thick or thin, we're going to figure this out. And it's not going to be easy. I'm going to hurt. I'm going to be angry. I'm going to be sad. I'm going to be depressed. I'm going to lash out. I'm not going to want to listen sometimes. And you have to recognize that. And when those things come, when those emotions happen, when you shut down and you don't want to listen to what this person has to say because fuck them, they hurt me. Is that the right course of action? Maybe you do need to listen. Maybe you hadn't been listening this whole time. That doesn't make it your fault. Don't take this the wrong way. It doesn't make this your fault. Again, when another person makes a decision to cheat on you, they have made that decision. They made that decision to not only hurt you, but hurt themselves. And God forbid if there's children involved, etc. But there's a lot of contributing factors that go into that bad decision made by that person. And you have to be able to honestly assess and look at yourself and go, was I part of that? Did I contribute to that? In my case, looking at it, yes, absolutely I did. Absolutely I contributed to it. Both knowingly and unknowingly. Because again, the mind is an amazing thing. It's a super powerful thing. It's a mystery. It's a mystery how we process this information. It's a mystery sometimes what comes out of the things that happen to us, the experiences that we have. It's amazing how we process those things. And it's amazing how we deal with them. If you really take a step back and look at it. Now, stepping away from the whole cheating issue, right? You could have a variety of things that happen. I mean, it doesn't have to be that. You can betray another person by allowing yourself to fall into addiction, right? Whether that be alcohol or drugs or porn or other self-destructive behavior. Suddenly a person that was never into adrenaline-seeking extreme sports where they put themselves at a great risk if they've never done that before, and then all of a sudden this is what they like to do all the time, they're compensating for something. They're compensating for this. And it's up to you as the person that is their other half to stop and detach yourself from this and go, what is contributing to these behaviors in my spouse, in my partner? Am I part of the cause? Am I a reason? Not the reason, but a reason. And that's extremely hard to do because you have to completely take your ego and take your active emotions out of it. And you have to detach. You have to detach from that uncomfortable situation and you have to take a look at it and you have to go, wow, why are they doing this? Why are they doing this? Am I part of it? Okay, I'm part of it. Now I'm going to give them a solution. I'm going to help them or not. That's a decision you make at the end of the day. That's a decision that you have to live with either way. I'm not saying it's right or it's wrong. I would say from my own opinion and my own experience that you have to at least try. If this is the person you've chosen to love, and love is a choice. You don't just meet somebody and it's just love. There might be some lust and instant attraction on either a physical, emotional, personal, intellectual, or all of the above instantaneously, but you don't instantaneously love that person. That's why they call it falling in love. There's a thing called love at first sight. Love at first sight is infatuation, is what that is. Now, that infatuation can absolutely lead to love. That infatuation can also blind you to problems that were already there to begin with. Or maybe you're awake to those problems and you don't care because this person was you feel in your soul was made for you. And those are the things, and I can equate this back to talking to Dr. Mike Simpson. And when we asked him the question of what would you say if you were to speak at a police graduation, and I know I've brought this up before in other episodes, but he says that, whenever you get to that point where you're burned out, where, think back to what it felt like on this day. What motivated you to be here? Those feelings, that excitement, that love and that passion that were there for your profession at the beginning. Sometimes you have to stop. You have to look back at it and you have to go, yes, that's why. And that alone sometimes can invigorate you to bring you back to a point to fix the problem. And I think the same thing is true in your relationship. When that darkness has taken hold, and it's squeezing the life out of you and your spouse. And you're going down these different roads leading to the ultimate parting of ways. You as an individual, you can't control what your spouse does or what they ultimately decide. They're a human being, right? They have free will. They have the ability to make a choice, right or wrong, whether you agree with it, whether it hurts you or not. It doesn't matter. You have to make a decision as an individual, both as being affected directly, as being part of the darkness, or being on the outside affected by the darkness. You have to sit there and you have to look back and you have to remember what it was that brought you together, what it was that you found so attractive about them, what it was that you connected through. And remember what that was like, and remember what those feelings were like, and remember that choice you made, that this was the person I chose. Through sickness and in health. Through the good times and the bad times, till death do us part. That's what I decided to do. That's what I chose. Now, I can easily make the choice to give that up. But what does that say about me? What does that say about my ability to commit? What does it say about my ability to fight through the struggles? Not much. At the end of the day. Now, of course, we'll have people in our lives that will justify our actions and justify our decisions because they're seeing it from our perspective, and them caring about us in all goodness will agree with those decisions to bail, to leave, to just give up. Some people think that they're just incapable of forgiveness, that there's some lines that are crossed that you just can't recover from. Well, time and time again, people have shown that's not true. And yes, it is the same for everyone. Whether you agree with that or not, it is what it is. There's certain basic things about human beings, and one of those is the ability to forgive. As hard as that may be, it doesn't mean you forget what happened. It doesn't mean that you don't make decisions going forward carefully until those lines have been reestablished. But it's that willingness. It's that willingness. And you can look back on it later on in life when you look back at your life and you made that decision. You made that decision to stay and to try and make it work. And let's say that it did. God willing, let's say that it did. You will look back on your life and you will thank God for that decision that you made. Because through tragedy, through overwhelming odds, when we come out on top, when we triumph, when we conquer what seems like an insurmountable mountain of struggle and pain, when we commit ourselves to it and we decide, okay, I'm going to make this work. Every time we defeat that enemy, we come out stronger. We come out stronger in a variety of ways. Because when we come out stronger, if it happens again, okay, we know what to do. We know that it didn't work the first time. We thought it did, but we learned a lot of lessons from it. And maybe at that point it is time. It is time to move on. Because at the same time, all of this being said, you can only take so much. A person can only take so much, especially if they're honest with themselves and they've really tried everything that they could. They've tried. They've put in the effort, and sometimes you do have to walk away. But before you do, you have to look at yourself. You have to look at yourself and decide and figure out, did I try? Did I do everything I possibly could? Did I push myself to the boundaries of uncomfortableness, to pain, to discomfort, to make this work? Did I give it my all? Because if you didn't, and you do leave, and you do throw it away, regardless of what side of it you're on, there's going to be a piece of that stays with you for the rest of your life. And if you decide to take the easy way out every single time, well, what's the point? What's the point of trying in the first place? What's the point of choosing another person to spend your life with if when tragedy and when heartache and when hurt and pain come your way, you decide to take the easy way out every time? You decide to quit. What's the point of starting it in the first place? You've accomplished nothing. At the end of the day, at the end of your life, when you look back on it, what can you say? What can you say about yourself? Look at where you are at this point in your life and look at all the struggles you've been through. Because we've all been through them, some more than others, some self-contrived, some external. And look back at those struggles, regardless of whether they were relationship, financial, it doesn't matter. And look back at it and go, did I create that situation? And if I did I do everything I could to fix it? Or did I not create that situation? Was it external, but I did everything I could to fix it? And on the ones that didn't work out, can you honestly look back at that and go, I'm okay with it. I did everything I could. I gave him my all. It didn't work out, but I'm okay with it. I'm okay with that failure because I gave it everything. If you can do that, at the end of the day, you'll have a fulfilled life. You'll have a successful life. We're always going to have more failures than we are wins. More failures than successes. That's part of growing up. It's part of maturing. It's part of being a human being. It's part of that human experience. And this is one of the many forms that the darkness takes, the darkness of life, the demons that we intersect with every single day. That's part of it. That is part of it. And it doesn't have to be cheating. It doesn't have to be addiction. It could be any number of things that cause us pain. How did I overcome it? How did I look at it? How did I face it? What was my behavior in that situation? Did I do everything I could? If you can't say that, then you didn't. And there will always be a piece of you that was lost in that failure. And if you keep allowing it to happen over and over and over again, you take the easy way out all the time. It gets rough and you just say, I quit. You're giving a piece of yourself up with every time you make that decision. And we live in a society right now where that's acceptable. It's acceptable to take the easy way out. Oh, I'm uncomfortable. Oh my God, I'm so uncomfortable. I'm out. Fuck that. Why do it in the first place? Why be a part of it in the first place? Why put yourself in that position in the first place? You might as well just stay at home. You might as well just stay at home and wallow in self-pity about all the bad things that have happened to you in your life. Because once you've committed yourself to giving it your all, win or lose, you've taken ownership of that situation. You own that situation. And if it succeeds, own it. Brag about it. If you fail, own it. Learn from it. teach others. Knowledge is only power when it's shared. Knowledge is only power when it's shared. I heard that listening to Jake Schick, who runs the 22 Kill Foundation. And I want to say I've heard it before, but maybe I didn't recognize it. But when he said it, it made a lot of sense. It stuck out to me. Because part of defeating that darkness is taking the lessons that you've learned and sharing them with others. That's why this podcast exists. It doesn't matter if it's one listener or it's 40,000. It doesn't matter. Because if the lessons I've learned, the lessons Big Bo's learned, if we can take those and we can give those to other people and share what we know, share what we've experienced, and it helps them overcome their challenge, overcomes the darkness in their life, then it's 100% worth it. It's 100% worth it. Regardless of whether a dime is made from this podcast or not, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The ultimate service you can be to others is to love and to help. To help people get through their struggles based on the struggles that you yourself have experienced. There's nothing about this life that's easy. There's nothing about this life that's ever going to be easy. What would be the point if it was? We'd be bored. No challenges, no heartaches, no mountains to climb, no struggles to overcome, no people to love, no people to be hurt by, no people to forgive. What would be the point? There wouldn't be one. There wouldn't be one. But it's real easy to get caught up in that mindset, that mindset that there's no point to this. And that's where I found myself 7 years ago, 2011. That's where I found myself. Coming out of a failed marriage, a marriage that shouldn't have happened in the first place, to be 100% honest. Two completely different people. They should have had no business being married. That's a lesson that was learned. And it was a hard lesson. And I'll always be grateful for my children. That makes it all worth it, right? That makes that struggle all worth it. And any of you that have children will know that. It makes it all worth it. Regardless of whatever happened, it doesn't matter. It makes it all worth it. And it's real easy to look back and say, well, if I could just trade all the rest of that and keep the kids, that'd be great. But that's not real. We learn nothing from that. And I'm glad that I had that experience. Honestly, I wouldn't change it, because if I did, I wouldn't be the person I am today. I wouldn't be that ever evolving person that, despite mistakes I make, which I do, I procrastinate on crap. I'm like a horrible procrastinator. When it comes to things like taxes and finance and stuff, I'm not good at that stuff. I'm not. I should be better than I am at it, but I'm not good at it. It's a struggle for me. It's a struggle. And it's a struggle I've procrastinated on, stuff like that. But I continue to evolve, right? That's the point. And one day I'll wake up and figure it out. But back then, in 2011, I had, up to that point, been in law enforcement since 2006. In a massive, urban area with a lot of violence, with a lot of crime. I had seen things. Bodies ripped apart. Dead people. victims of crimes, officers hurt, killed. And I hadn't dealt with those things because I wouldn't let my ego step down. I'm good. It's the famous saying, right? I'm good. When you ask somebody how they're doing, what do you want to hear them say? You don't want to hear them stop and go, well, fuck. I mean, I've got this going on. I've got this. And you're like, holy shit. Just trying to say hi. That's it. I don't want to hear your crap. So the standard response becomes, I'm good. And then you throw in the whole, I'm a, super alpha male, machismo, big tough blue suitor. And it's all a bunch of shit is what it is. It's a bunch of bullshit. Because up to that point, those 5 years, up to that point, man, I had it all bottled up. That little guy back there that manages that little box of good and bad things that I talked about earlier, yeah, he'd had enough. He'd had enough. He didn't have enough room in that box for all the shit that I was stuffing in there. That dude hated me. He was giving me the middle finger every day. And on top of that, a failing marriage, a divorce and custody battle, a new relationship. Financial struggles from the divorce. I felt lost. I felt isolated and alone, even though I had people around me. I had my brothers around me. I had my new girlfriend around me. But it wasn't enough. I wasn't satisfied. I wasn't getting that fulfillment. I wasn't feeling happy. And I wasn't mature enough, evidently, to take a step back and look at it and go, you know what? I've got to deal with this before something bad happens. I didn't do that. I mean, shit, I got to a point where I'd get off work and the first thing I would do is I'd go home and start drinking. I'd drink before I went to sleep. Now that stopped when I met my now spouse. A lot of that stopped. Mainly because I didn't want to feel judged. Right? So I guess I did recognize one issue. But it's the other issues that snuck up on me, that I allowed to sneak up on me because I didn't deal with those things. And ultimately, it spiraled and I became more and more depressed and I kept getting more and more down on myself. And I started thinking, what's the point? What is the point of all of this? That darkness had reached in with both hands and grabbed me around the throat and was squeezing ever so slowly. So slowly, I didn't recognize it. But as I continued to suffocate and I got to the breaking point, I began to have those thoughts that darkness, those demons they want you to have. I was possessed by it, consumed by it. It engulfed a lot of my waking moments, especially when I wasn't at work and I wasn't so busy that I didn't have time to think about everything else. And there were plenty of times where I didn't want to be here anymore. I just wanted to end it. I wanted it to go away. I wanted the pain to stop. I felt like I was a burden on others. I felt like people would be better off. My children would be better off. My girlfriend, now my wife, would be better off. They would be better off if I was not here. So as that darkness consumed me, just like it does others, we fail to recognize because we're not seeing what they're seeing. We're not seeing what the outside world is seeing. We're only seeing what's in front of us and what's in our heads. And we become so wrapped up by it, so incredibly wrapped up by it, that we don't know anything else. What we don't realize is that of course they want us around. Of course something like that would be devastating to them. They would be hurt and confused and shocked. They would want answers to questions they would never receive. And then comes the regret. The what could I have done differently? And you begin to blame yourself. How do I know this? Well, in September of 2012, the wake-up call came. I got a phone call from a friend of mine, another blue suitor, another copper. And one of our friends had put a gun to his head and pulled the trigger and ended his life. The real reason why? Who the fuck knows? There was no note. It was spontaneous. There was probably some alcohol involved. And it was a decision that was made. It was a decision that was made because ultimately there were overwhelming circumstances that hadn't been dealt with. At least that's my opinion. He was a cop. He was a good cop. He was a good person. He loved his children. But I guess he couldn't do it anymore. And he decided to check out. And that happens a lot. And it's real easy to say, God, how the fuck could somebody do that? How selfish of them. Until you've walked a mile in those shoes, you won't understand. You see, I was there. I was there in that mindset. I understood. And that's a hard thing to recognize, especially in yourself. Because you don't talk yourself out of it. You can talk to yourself a lot, and ultimately you end up doing that. But at the end of every conversation, you find a way to justify your thought process. You see, you got to have that outside influence. See, that darkness, it doesn't want you to have that outside influence. That demon that embeds itself inside of you, it does not want you to have that outside influence. It wants to consume you. It wants to take you over, and it wants to bring you down into its hell. And everybody has a breaking point. His suicide was one of the things that contributed to my breaking point. Because being at his funeral, seeing all the people that were affected by his decision, a decision I well understand, as do countless others, seeing his boys devastated, in shock. Is that what I wanted for my children? Seeing his fiancée devastated. Is that what I wanted for mine? No. God, no, not in a million years. I knew that I had to make a change. I knew that I had to somehow distance myself from this demon that embedded itself in me. I didn't know how, but I knew it had to happen. Because if I didn't, I knew that the damage would be irreparable. You see, because when you get that far down the path, when the demon has you by the throat and it's dragging you down that path into the depths of that darkness, if you don't fight and you let him win, yeah, your pain's over. But that's when everybody else's begins. Truly. Couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. So how do we come to the point where we fix it? How do we even start that process? Jesus Christ, that seems just as overwhelming as going through it. In his death, it reminded me that in his life, you never would have known that anything was wrong with him. You never would have known that he was suffering, because on the outside, he was always laughing and joking and having a good time, and just seemed like this guy was high on life all the time. Of course, that's the outward projection. Those so close, absolutely closest to him, the people that were around him day and night, probably knew otherwise, right? Because there's signs. There's going to be signs. You're going to have tells that you don't know what you're doing. But in the conversation, I learned that communication was the key to fixing this. And so I began to open myself up. These demons that were inside of me, this one that wanted me to follow, I had to punch him square in the fucking face and tell him, no, I'm not doing this. And I had to turn around and walk the other way, back into the light. And you do that by opening yourself up, and it's super uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable and it's hard, but you have to force yourself to do it. And I began communicating. And after a while, those thoughts went away. Yeah, were there still problems? Were there still struggles? Sure. It doesn't change that. Those are still there. Those still exist. Those aren't going to go away. Not without a lot of external work. And that's what I began to do. I had hurt everyone around me. I'd been so selfish in my behavior because it became the only thing I knew how to do. But at the end of the day, I was still left with a choice. And that choice was to walk away from the darkness. Does it still come up from time to time? The darkness? Sure. Sure, absolutely. I'm still in the profession. You can't escape it. Do things happen in your life that contribute to that darkness? Yeah, sure, they happen to me. I still struggle. I still deal with depression. Those are things that come up. I've never been the guy that could sit there and walk around and with a smile on his face and fake his way through it. I've always kind of worn my emotions on my sleeves, but that's not a bad thing either. And it takes other people. It takes ourselves to recognize that in other people. It takes ourselves to look at our brothers, either in profession or our family or our friendships, and look for these struggles and say, hey, I'm here. Sometimes that's all it takes. Sometimes it takes more. Sometimes it takes a lot more. Sometimes you don't succeed. Sometimes the person's so far gone that they don't want to hear it, that they're not willing to, or they haven't reached that point where they recognize that they have to pull themselves out of it and that they're going to need help doing so. And sometimes they make really bad decisions before they can reach that conclusion. And you have to look at that and go, did I try? And it all goes back to that ownership, that taking ownership. We are a tribe. We're a tribe made up of individuals, and we have to take a part of ourselves and a part of our lives and reach out to others and help others, because not everyone can do this alone. Most people cannot do this alone. They cannot go through these struggles alone and come out on top. It's just not possible. We wish it was, right? But it's not. It's not. You have to have other people. And it's because we're this tribe of individuals that need each other. We need each other. We just do. Rare is the loner that doesn't need anyone. That's a statistical abnormality. They're out there, but they're few and far between. The rest of us need someone. Even if it's someone that just to say hi to us every day. And literally the way to deal with this, the way to fix this, the way to begin to overcome this and to get through it is we have to look back at ourselves, and we have to make that decision again. It all goes back to the beginning issue that I was talking about. It doesn't matter if it's a broken marriage, a broken relationship, a cheating spouse, an addict, a suicidal person, a person that's just struggling through life. It doesn't matter. The solution is all the same. Communication, reaching out, looking at yourself first and going, am I doing enough for the people in my life that I love, that I care about, regardless of association? Regardless of how intense that association is. It might be just an acquaintance. It might be just somebody you know from work. Hell, it might be a complete stranger. But we're all in this fight together, right? So therefore, we all have a connection. We all have a basic connection to each other. That's the tribe of humanity. And you have to look at yourself. Again, you have to look at yourself and decide if you're doing enough. And what enough is subjective to the individual. But if you're looking at yourself and you're going, okay, I got to fix these things about myself and I'm going to use that to help other people. It's a constant cycle. It's a constant cycle. And it's a constant struggle. It's part of life. Few are the people that get to roll through life in complete happiness. Even they have some first world problem that pops up. What color phone am I going to get? What color Maserati am I going to buy this week? Right? There's those people out there. And that's their biggest stress. And for them, it's a fucking nightmare. Granted, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't compare to some of the stuff that you and I have been through. But for them in that moment, it feels like it, right? Everybody struggles on different levels. Everybody struggles in different ways. But you can't help others until you help yourself. You're no good to other people unless you're good to yourself. And through this whole process over the last 7 years, and really beyond that, because it's not like I grew up in a perfect home. I didn't. I grew up in a fucking shit show. Where I had to be an adult before I was even a teenager. And in turn, made very bad decisions and began to live an adult life as a teenager. And then, God, I got into music and started playing in a rock band, and boy, that didn't help, right? And for some people, it takes longer than others. And I'm not saying that I have it all figured out. It was a culmination of events throughout an entire life. Up until that point of 2011, where I knew I had to heal, that there were still bad decisions that I had made that I was going to have to deal with for years to come. And sure as shit, I still do. And that's okay. It's okay because I'm willing. At least on most days, I'm willing. There's still days where I don't want to deal with certain things. Days where my patience is worn thin. Days where I'm angry. Days where I've had enough. And I don't want to deal with them. I don't want to face them. And I know that's the wrong decision to make. But the next day, I have to pick myself up. Sometimes in that moment, sometimes it's not even the next day. Sometimes I don't have that long or that luxury to wait that long to deal with the problem. Sometimes I have to take a step back. I have to take a breath and I have to reapproach it. I have to detach from the situation and understand it from the other person's perspective, the person that I've hurt. And these are lessons that we can all apply and be successful. And that doesn't mean successful in a business sense. It means successful in a personal sense. It means we can move forward. And that's the point, right? Moving forward. Living a successful life. Because I could look back at age 90, God willing I make it that far, at age 90 and look back on my life, if I've tried everything that I possibly could have and done everything that I possibly could have to 100% of my capability, and I was honest with myself, I can honestly look back at 90 years old and not have a penny in the bank and go, I live a successful life. Now, do I want more than that? Sure, everybody does, right? That's that baseline of satisfaction. There's a lot of other factors involved in living a successful life. But I think, in my opinion, and I'm sure others have a different opinion or would disagree with me or would disagree with all of this, but for me, that's that base level of satisfaction. That's the base level of fulfillment, is giving it your all. And that's all we can do. That's all we can do. And I want you to remember that, I'm a professional law enforcement officer. And yet this is the life that I've experienced. Right? I'm no different than anyone else. Nor is Big Bo, nor is any other cop out there, or firefighter, or soldier, or sailor, marine, airman, coastie, paramedic, Forest Service officer. It doesn't matter. We all are part of this human experience. We all make mistakes. We all make bad decisions, and we choose whether to learn from them or not. And that sends us down two very distinctly different paths. And for those of you out there that are not in my world of profession, whether you like us or not, which I would assume you do if you're listening to this podcast because, the premise of it, but if you're on the fence, or even if you support, just remember that we're no different than you. I'm no different than you. I may have been through more, I may have been through less. It doesn't matter. I've been through it. I've been through the experience. I can relate to you. We're all on this journey together. We're all part of this tribe. So, with that, I think that's going to be about all I've got for this episode. So next week, first, I've shared all this with you and tried to be as transparent as possible. And I would love to hear what you've been through. I would love to hear your life experience. I don't care if it's a 45-page email. It doesn't matter to me. I want to hear from you. I want to hear what you've been through. And if you're willing to allow us to share what's happened to you, we like to call them war stories. But if you're willing to share, let us know. And we'd be more than happy because, like I said, we're all part of this together. And maybe something you've been through, maybe something you've experienced, maybe it can help somebody else. Maybe it can help me. Maybe it can help Big Bo. Knowledge is power, but only if it's shared. Remember that. And if you are struggling, if you are out there and that demon has his hands around your throat and he's dragging you down, and you feel like you're getting to that point of no return, or you feel like you could get there, reach out. Reach out to someone. There's always someone willing to listen. And if you don't feel comfortable reaching out to somebody in your own life, well, my email is jc@streetwarriorradio.com. I'll listen. Big Bo is Big Bo, BIGBO, @streetwarriorradio.com. He'll listen. Send us an email. Hell, give us your phone number. I'll call you. He'll call you. Go to 22kill.com. Go to humanizingthebadge.com. If you're not a member of law enforcement or military or first responders, and you feel these struggles, crisis hotline, suicide prevention, National Suicide Prevention Network. You can do it anonymously online. There's so many places you can go online and anonymously tell your story and get some help. You can't do it alone. I'm living proof of that. You can't do it alone. Because if you could, we wouldn't have any need for each other, right? Except for fun. And thank God, I was smart enough at the time to recognize that, because otherwise we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. And for my brothers in blue and my brothers on the fireside, paramedics, and my brothers across the line in the military, it's not weakness, man. It's normal. And when I say brothers, I mean brothers and sisters. It's kind of all inclusive in the brotherhood. It's not weakness. It's normal. It's normal to feel this way. There's only so much these little floating fucking weirdly shaped things in between our ears can take. There's only so much the heart can take. Our physical body can take a tremendous amount. It's incredible what the human body can do. But our minds and our hearts are a little more fragile. And it's not weakness. It doesn't make you lesser of a man or lesser of a woman. You don't have anything to prove. You've already done that. You signed up. You don't have anything else to prove. The rest are just details. But if you're struggling, it's normal. And you've got to start the conversation. And if you're not at that point and you recognize somebody's struggling, you have a responsibility, you have an obligation to try and help them. Reach out. Ask what's wrong. Don't stop until you get an answer. You may literally save someone's life. As always, share your stories. I repeat that all the time. We don't get enough stories. I wish we had more stories. I really enjoy it when people send their stories in, both good and bad. I really enjoy sharing this experience of life with others. It's therapeutic in a lot of ways. But with that said, let's move on to something a little bit better, right? So, good news. Big Bo will be back next week, and I won't have to sit here and talk into a mic and open my heart up. We will, with episode 017 coming back, that's going to be a weird episode. So we're gonna kind of go against the grain of our normal content and subject matter, and it's going to be interesting. We're going to talk about conspiracies and the paranormal and some experiences, and that's going to be different, right? And then we got working on a couple of guests, and for future episodes, and I'm hoping to bring more perspectives to you. And if you want to find us, you can always go to the website at streetwarriorradio.com. On top of that, you can find us on our social media. Now, Twitter sucks, right? So Twitter's a giant pain in the butt because I just don't get it. That's what it comes down to. I just don't get it. So I still put episode information and updates out there. Occasionally I put some BS tweet out there, but the predominant place you can find us for content is going to be Facebook and Instagram. And on Facebook and Instagram, you can just in your search bar type in Street Warrior Radio. It's going to pop up. On Twitter, if you want to follow us on there, it's Street Warrior Radio, but it's spelled STRT, the word warrior, and then RDIO. Check us out there. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, stories, you can send those to streetwarriorradio.com/contact or on that email at info@streetwarriorradio.com. You can also reach out to us personally. Again, my email is JC, the letter JC, at streetwarriorradio.com. Big Bo is bigbo at streetwarriorradio.com, BIGBO at streetwarriorradio.com. Also, if you're into blogging or interested in getting into blogging, I'm in the process of creating a blog for the website, and I'm looking for content contributors. I don't want to be the only one up there typing crap because that gets boring. So if you have some sort of topic that you want to discuss, and I don't care what it is, where I'll create multiple different categories for people that are interested. But if you want to talk about law enforcement related issues or fire related issues or paramedic related issues or military related issues or firearms training or medical care or child care or your boss is a dick or whatever, I don't care. Send us your stuff. That email address is blog, BLOG, at streetwarriorradio.com. I really want to hear what you guys have to say. I'm really interested in what is out there. I want to create kind of a network and a collective on this blog of different mindsets, of different opinions, so that we can all learn from each other and we can all share our experiences and our knowledge. I think that's absolutely vital to the human experience. And it's just a small way of doing so. It's free. It's not, send it. As long as it's some racist crap or advocating, molestation of children or rape or anything, it's going to get put up there. As I get content depends on when I roll out that portion of the site. Also on the site, we've created an events page. The events page is a calendar, an interactive calendar, which has episode schedule, episode information. It also has upcoming events, either that we think you should participate in, or that we are participating in, and then click on those. It will give you as much detail as we could find on it, venue information, ticket information if such thing exists, whatever organization is putting on the event, there'll be access to or links to their websites. Just basically want to put as much information out there as possible, so that you're informed before you get involved with something. I'm hoping to have the calendar to where it's up where it's 2 months in advance at a time. So basically, if you went on there now, you get to see the next 2 months. And so what are we in? We're at the end of April. Today is April 26th as I record this. So in the next few days, I will add the month of June on there. I don't know that we have any events. We've got, speaking of events, let's see. We've got the Chris Kyle Memorial Foundation benefit is going to be on May 4th and 5th at the Stockyards in Fort Worth, Texas. Make sure you check that out. It's an incredible event. There's a lot of people that go to that. There's a lot of influential people that go to that. A lot of celebrities go to that. There's a lot of different events that happen. There's raffles. There's all sorts of stuff, live entertainment, etc. There's a skeet shoot, which looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. Big Bo and I were planning on being there for sure. However, there's been a lot of different changes in the schedule, so we're going to do our best to be there. But if you're out there and you see Mr. Jeff Kyle, give him a handshake. And he's a major portion of that. And then let's see, May 19th and 20th. Yes. So Saturday and Sunday, May 19th and 20th, we have the Modern Samurai Project 2-day Red Dot Pistol Course in Fort Worth, Texas at Lone Star Training Center. Mr. Scott Jedi Jedlinski, who was on episode 10 of the podcast, will be putting on that class. We will be there at that class. A lot of information if you're interested in firearms training, interested in learning how to apply a red dot sight to a handgun. He is the man to learn from on that. So check that out. I've already posted some links on the Facebook and Instagram page, but I will post more as we get closer. So, podcast is available on iTunes, GooglePlay, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, SoundCloud, and pretty much all the other podcasting apps that are out there you can find us on. Please subscribe on whatever your preferred platform is. Leave us a review, rate us a review, especially if you're on iTunes. Give us a review. Rate us and give us a review. That helps us out in the iTunes rankings. It's a way you can help support the podcast if you like it, and it helps us continue. The more we move up in the the iTunes rankings, the more support we get, the more listeners we get, the more easier it is for us to continue and continue to do this. And that's what we want. We want our message to get out there. We believe in it. Also, we have a YouTube channel, Street Warrior Radio Podcast. All that's on there right now, we're getting to a point where we're going to be able to begin video recording the podcast. That is coming. I can't tell you when, but that is coming. As for right now, the audio only episodes are up there, which I know is kind of annoying. It's like, what's the point of putting that on YouTube? But we wanted to get it established and get used to the process and all that. So eventually we'll get the videos up. There are a couple of original content videos up there. There are more of those coming. It just comes down to time and being able to get that all together. And there's also budget concerns at this point. If you want to support the podcast, one of the ways you can do that is going to the streetwarriorradio.com website and clicking on the Amazon link. If you click on the Amazon link, it will take you to our quote-unquote store. Do your normal Amazon shopping through there, and a portion of those proceeds come directly back to the podcast, and that helps us continue the podcast. It helps us with monthly dues and all that kind of stuff. It's really a big help. So for all those that have done that, we appreciate it. Everybody shops through Amazon, so why not take that extra step, go through our website, click the Amazon link. Also, we have a reading list on the website, books that we like that have influenced us. If you're a reader, you can go on there. Each of the books that's listed there, if you click on the book cover, it will take you directly to Amazon through our store to that particular book if you want to buy it. Most of those books have some sort of audio version available, or you can get them in hardcover or paperback, or a variety of combinations there. And I think that's it. So with that, I want to give a thank you to the men and women of our armed forces. Thank you for going out there every day, sacrificing your time, and so that we can do all this. We can be nonsensical and deal with our little first world problems, right? We can have arguments over Starbucks and stupid shit. But without you guys, stupid shit like that wouldn't be possible, and the alternative is just not something I'm interested in. To our first responders out there, our police, fire, paramedics on all levels, thank you for what you do. Thank you for keeping us safe here at home. Remember your oath. Continue to do the right thing, and we will persevere. And to all those people out there that make the world go round, you make everything. You know, when I get people that thank me for my for my service as a police officer. One, it's super appreciated. I don't expect it. And so, because it doesn't happen that often, because I don't expect it, and it's fine that it doesn't. But when it does happen, it is special. And like I've said before, everyone else out there that makes the world go around, you make the world worth fighting for. And it's true. It's true. Y'all make it worth it. Y'all make the service worth it. Even all the knuckleheads out there, because they keep me employed, keep me in business. With that, stay tuned next week for episode 017. Big Bo will be back in the Casa de JC studio, and we're going to talk about a bunch of nonsense. So with that, Street Warrior Radio is out of service.